Hey everyone, welcome back to this special Q&A this beautiful Monday evening, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, right here on the Canadian Immigration Institute. I am your host, Mark Holthe, Canadian immigration lawyer. I've been at this gig almost 20 years. I guess in a way it has been 20 years. I started in 2002 working on the border as an officer, and since that time, I've been playing around in this industry for all of these past 20 years. It's crazy to see what has happened, how much has transformed. This live Q&A is all directed towards you H1B visa holders in the United States. This is the questions I'm going to be fielding. This is the focus we're going to have tonight. Remember, every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m., I answer questions about express entry and other areas of Canadian immigration. And Thursdays at noon Mountain Time, that's when Alicia and I go on to talk about Canadian immigration generally. So if you've got questions, keep them confined to the H1B visa holder work permit, as that is the focus of this live. Now, I had 11 consultations today. 6 of them were directed towards the H1B visa holder program. So individuals looking for opportunities, and some of the stories, I'll be honest, were downright heartbreaking. And this is part of the reason why I'm doing this. I want to share as much information as I possibly can. It's interesting, as I was going through, you're always going to have haters, right? You're always going to have people that are, have nothing, nothing better to do than to try to, drag you down when you're trying to do some good. And so I was reading some of the comments and some of the videos, and one of the person says, "Oh, this, don't go with this joker. He's not doing anything." And then they told their own story about how they went to the US. And I did a video earlier today advising people to be careful when they're choosing to hire. And in some cases, it may be in your best interest to just consider a DIY option. Now, within our firm, we are absolutely representing people, but I restrict it to one. And the reason that I restrict each lawyer to one person is because I honestly believe when they open this up and on July the 16th, that in a matter of hours, if they do it a first in process, and then once the cap is hit, they're done. If they truly do that and they set it up in that fashion, it's going to be a matter of hours before the cap is reached. And if I'm helping one client that has paid me good money, and I make no excuses for what we charge, if someone's paying me good money to file their application and I've got 4 other people waiting in line, how much of a chance do you think number 2 and progressively less a chance number 3, number 4, number 5 are going to have? So my advice was to seriously ask questions to whichever representative you're going to be working with, to confirm that it's them that you're working with, not some person they've hired off the street 2 days ago to try to, funnel through all of these work permit holder applications, but instead ask the question, who's working with me? Is there someone ahead of me? Because I'll be honest, like within our firm, I refuse to take more than one person. And the reality is that's why I created my DIY course, to help people navigate their way through it. And this isn't my first rodeo with this. I had the same experience with the TR to PR Pathway program, which was a permanent resident program in Canada in 2021 to transition essential workers, international students into permanent resident status. And they did it a similar way. They opened everything up. I think it was May 6th, 2021. They opened it up, and any person that met the requirements had a shot at it. But once the cap was reached, the cart essentially was closed. You couldn't get in, and that was it. And so I saw a lot of people who had retained other consultants and other firms that didn't get in. And I just feel like you guys are pretty savvy. You guys are, if you're H1B specialty occupation workers, you know what you're doing. And the reality is, if you are interested, that's why I'm here, to help you, guide you, direct you. And obviously I want people to subscribe to the course for a number of reasons, and I'll get to that later. But this is all about getting your questions answered. So without further ado, let's just dive in and see who we've got tuning in here. So let's pull away and slide off our my little main heading there. And so questions like Marissa's here, and welcome Marissa on LinkedIn. How do we get an LMIA? That's something we're not going to talk about tonight, but definitely bring it up next Wednesday. Come and join me, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, and I'm happy to answer those questions. Andy, good to see you. Greetings from Ottawa, Ontario, and thank you for this live. And that's another good point. So, when you're looking to retain someone, it is totally awesome to hire an experienced immigration lawyer or consultant that knows what they're doing, if you know that they're the one that's going to be helping you and that you're not further back in the line, this queue. Okay. and ask the questions. So they're by far, if you've hired someone who knows how to do it, is experienced, you're going to have a better experience than if you don't know anything about it and you're just trying to do it on your own. It's just going to be really, really tough if it's a first in to file. But yeah, absolutely. Please be careful. Because last time with the TR to PR pathway, I saw so many people who had problems, and I'll be honest, I have now a ton of consultations piling in. I don't know, Andy, if it's the same for you, but the reality is I've got a ton of consultations piling in for people who have just recently had their TR to PR pathways rejected. So, okay, let's get to some more. Okay, over on Facebook, good to have you, Sujit. Sujit says, is this only available to people who have an H1B visa or in H1B status? Because I'm on H1B status and have an approval letter from the US CIS, but haven't got a chance to get an H1B visa stamp yet. Sujit, I'll be honest, I do not know to what extent IRCC considers someone to be a H1B visa holder in the US. We're waiting for the actual program delivery instructions, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But yeah, at this stage, I don't know, but stay tuned, because the moment I find out, I will let you know. And when I get good questions like yours, I actually take a screenshot of them and I save them so that I can look it up. And then in the next Q&A we do, and I can guarantee that I will be doing a lot over the next couple of weeks until this launches on July the 16th, which, you guys, is a Sunday. And why in the world would they do this on a Sunday? Well, they want to give as many people, and this is why I feel like it's likely going to be a first in, first out. So whoever raced to file can get theirs in first is going to have, going to be able to get through. The reason I do that is because to open it up on a Sunday suggests that they want everybody to file all at once, and they want it to be a feeding frenzy. And if you are working during the day and they do it at noon on a Tuesday, well, they don't want everybody like walking out of their jobs to go and file it. Like with the TR to PR pathway, it was similar to that. Now, for me, having to take Sunday to help people with it, it is what it is. I don't like to work on Sunday, but I get why this is happening. So each of those little hints, you can kind of extrapolate what the government might be doing. Okay, let's see who else we have here. And he says, don't pay attention to the haters. Yeah, I know. I'm a people pleaser though. And I really, sometimes it cuts when people say you're a money grubbing lawyer, given the years that I've done these live Q&As. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Andy, for those positive support. Really appreciate it. Okay. Okay. Hardy says, do you know when we will get confirmation of the knock that will apply for the H1B? And so that's a really good question. And this is something that I want to share. I'll just slide over here and I'll share this screen with you. And let's just take, before we dive into a lot more questions, let's just take a very, very clear look at exactly what the government has released. And just like the past videos I've done on my YouTube channel and that I've shared all throughout the social media channels that we have, there's often little nuggets of information that are embedded that if you don't really understand how immigration works, and I spent time as an immigration officer, unless you know how immigration works, sometimes the little cues, the little tips that are released in these announcements are sometimes embedded and people just gloss right over them. So let's just take a look at this. So this is the news release, and you can see there's very little. So it talks about the minister at the collision conference, the tech conference. Many of you are probably familiar with it. Honorable Sean Fraser, this fine fellow right here, appeared there in person and did this big announcement as part of this Canada's first ever tech talent strategy. And this is part of it. Okay. Minister Fraser announced the following aggressive attraction measures. So they're not messing around, you guys. So this is one little nugget that he provided. The creation of an open work permit stream for H1B specialty occupation visa holders. Okay. So first off, is there any restriction here to just tech? Do you see any restriction just to tech? So far, it says H1B specialty occupation visa holders. Well, as far as I know, H1B are all specialty occupation visa holders. So I'm not sure if I see any restriction there. And why am I bringing that up? Well, the question here is, what are the knock codes? Well, are there knock codes? Will there even be knock codes? That is what we're waiting to find out. Now, in the US, so that, for my purposes, assumes that they are going to be focusing on people that are actually in the United States who are visa holders. And if you're not, then that might suggest to us, at least if you were to interpret what they're saying here, that you're not going to be able to get through if you are not in the US right here and the holder of an H1B visa. All right. Now, whether it's the separate distinctions that you've identified there in that comment, I'll look into that and see if there's anything that I can drum up, but this is what we're working with. And what is it to apply for a Canadian work permit? This isn't permanent residence. This isn't a permanent solution to all of you, but it does give you an open door to then explore what might be possible in Canada if the US does not offer meaningful pathways to permanent residence. All right. And this is the part I've had a lot of people ask, well, what about my spouse? Can I get a work permit for my spouse? This is where I have to presume that the answer is yes, that when you file one of these work permits, you should be able to include an open work permit for your spouse. Now, the rules have to be modified to allow for this because generally speaking, when you're applying for a regular spousal open work permit, the principal applicant spouse has to already have a job lined up and be working in a skilled occupation. Well, that's not the case anymore. It's open. So study and work, you can see to apply for a Canadian work permit and a study or work permit for their accompanying family members, spouse and children. So that's one little nugget we can pull out. And that's all there is on this news release. So then we jump to the other possibilities. This here is a more fulsome breakdown, a backgrounder that lays the foundation for what's to come. This is not the specific details, but it does give a little bit of information. So you can see once again, Minister Fraser right here, this fine fellow right here, announced an approach that includes four key pillars involved, four key pillars involving additions and improvements to programs offered. And this is all related to Canada's tech talent strategy. Now, like you said, I don't see anything at this stage that would restrict it just to tech, but we will see. I think tech is one of the communities that would be benefited from this, but we'll just have to see. So if we scroll down here to number 3, this is probably the most fulsome details we have about this H1B Visa holder program, but there's still things that we can pull out from it. So let's take a look at it. I'm going to enlarge this a little bit so that you guys can see it a little bit better, because I know the screen sometimes can be kind of small. So you can see they're going to improve labor mobility in North America by creating a streamlined work permit. So streamlined leads me to believe that it's not going to be as comprehensive as the other work permit applications out there. So once again, it's going to be some form of application that streamlines, or in other words, doesn't ask for the same level of detail that a normal work permit would. And then it's for H1B, once again, specialty occupation visa holders, where in the US to apply to come to Canada, once again, temporarily. So now a little bit more details and background. Thousands of workers in high-tech fields are employed with companies that have large operations in both Canada and the US, and those working in the US often hold an H1B specialty occupation. Okay, so it seems to indicate that they are reaching out to companies that have operations on both sides. But is that restrictive? No, it's not. It's not just going to be, US companies that have operations, large operations in Canada and the US, because this is truly an open work permit. There are other pathways, which are basically the equivalent of your L work visas in the US, intercompany transfer, specialized knowledge, L1B equivalents in Canada that would allow for these large operations to transfer their specialty people. Okay. But the reality is, if you're on an H1B in the US, this is who IRCC is specifically targeting. So then as of July 16th, once again, this confirms that it's going to open up July 16th, these H1B specialty occupation visa holders in the US and their accompanying family, once again, will be eligible to come. In the previous one we looked at here, you could see that it specifically states study or work permits. So that tells me once again that open dependents should be included within these applications. Now, one question that I'm going to bring up and I'm going to pose to you guys, if it is a race to file, it takes longer to file all the applications for family, right, in Canada, to come to Canada than it would take for an individual applicant. So that's something to factor in. How does that play a role? I would never leave my family behind initially, but applying for an open work permit and then coming to Canada, do you include your dependents with you? Is there time to do it? I would never recommend you separate your family out just so that you can get in quicker. I think if you listen to what I say and what I teach and what I instruct, I think people are going to be well prepared, because lots of people won't. And understand that you guys care more about your application than anyone else does. No lawyer, no consultant, no representative cares as much about this process as you do. And so that's why I really love being a lawyer who empowers you. And yes, do I represent people directly? Yes, I do, because they want peace of mind. And we do within the firm. And we already have 4 people queued up for our firm that we're going to be working with, but I refuse to take more unless we have the capacity to do it. Now, it's possible that the government could turn around and say, as of July 16th, you can start applying, but we will take applications all through that month. And if that's the case, then absolutely get whoever you want to help you do it, to get extra support or whatever it might be, because there isn't this crazy race to file, but we just don't know. So my goal is to prepare all of you as much as possible, give you as much support so that you can be ready to pivot no matter what the process looks like. Okay, let's shift back here and let's continue down the path. So approved applicants will receive an open work permit for up to 3 years in duration, which means they will be able to work for almost any employer anywhere in Canada. What this means is not all positions with an open work permit can you work in every place, every occupation. There are some medical restrictions when you're working in the healthcare field or with small children that would require someone to get an immigration medical in order to work in those occupations. But even that is not rocket science. You can do it. And then see here, once again, their spouses and dependents will also be eligible to apply for a temporary resident visa with a work or study permit as needed. This to me really locks up the fact that dependent spouses should be able to apply at the same time for a work permit, right? And then why are they doing it? This will expand opportunities available for skilled workers to continue to pursue their careers in high-tech sector and contribute to economic growth and prosperity in North America. This is like the redheaded stepchild. Canada's like, hey, the US doesn't really want you guys. And we know we're not as cool as the US, but we're kind of a redheaded stepchild. And if you come work for us, you're still in the North American market and you may very well have opportunities, right? Well, in fairness, I get what they're saying. And no, Canada is no US when it comes to tech, even though we're really pushing hard and we're trying to establish ourselves in that market. We really are. And I think the steps that Canada is taking and the direction that we're going is really making a difference. And there are more opportunities, but clearly you're going to make more money in the US than you are in Canada. But it's all the other things that Canada grants and that Canada offers that I think makes it worthwhile to proceed down this. And we'll talk to some other people about this, but ultimately this is kind of what we're getting at. So let's look at one other thing here. So this measure will remain in effect for 1 year. So, it's not a 1 year, it's not a 1 month process where they just let people pile in and then they choose from there. Whenever they say it remains in effect for 1 year, to me, that once again solidifies that this is a first to file process. And whoever gets themselves in, because you can see here, or until IRCC receives 10,000 applications. That's also a very, very solid confirmation that it's going to be a race to file. There's only one way that this will play out is if they open it up and people rush in and then it's the first people to get their complete applications filed properly that are going to win. And you can see the 10,000 here only counts towards the number of principal applicants. People can bring as many family members, dependent family members as they have to accompany them. They won't count towards the cap. Okay, then the last couple pieces I'll show you, and then we'll get to some specific Q&As. Here's one page also, and I'm just pulling up every outward public-facing document about this. So there's a lot of reading between the lines, and there'll be a lot more detail coming out, but I want you guys to start to be prepared and start thinking about what you need to do now. So attracting tech talent to Canada, they talk about these programs. And right off the bat, programs we're introducing, work permits for H1B Visa holders. And you can see here coming July 16th, Canada wants to offer international tech the opportunity to stay in North America. And what is that a code for? All of you that are laid off, all of you who have lost your jobs recently. I just had a consult with an individual today who flew to Canada literally on Thursday. And then once they got to flew to the US on Thursday on their H1B visa. And then on Friday, the company announced layoffs. So you guys know the situation. You've got 60 days to find another job. Like, it's horrific, cruel. And lots of people talk about, well, what does Canada do in those situations? Well, if you're laid off in Canada, if your work permit was issued for 3 years and you still have 2 years left, then you can chill in Canada. Now, you can't work for any, if you're actually laid off and it's employer specific work permit, like the H1B is, you can stay in Canada for the full duration of the work permit. You just can't work for any other employer. So you've got more time to play with. They're not as cruel. But remember, this is an open work permit. So if things don't work out for one company, you move over to another. It's really, really a cool process. All right, let's jump back and kind of iron out these last pieces. So the new program will let current H1B specialty occupation visa holders work for almost any company in Canada. You can see that, and bring their immediate family. So they repeat that over and over and over again. The program will last for 1 year or until we get 10,000 applications. Okay. The other stuff, so nothing more. But I want to show you this right here. I think is the magical page that could very well house the spot where you start from when it comes to applying. So when I look down here, I can see you have talent. We have opportunities. Way to go. So you can see our immigration system helps all this stuff. International talent get to Canada quickly. Throughout Canada, you'll find they're basically promoting the country. Large network of employers, world-class education. Yes, true. Safety, security, stability, culture that celebrates diversity, and services to help newcomers settle and feel welcome. And all that's true. So here's some of the options. I want to come permanently. You can see there's buttons that you can click on to get started. Startup visa, get started. I want to immigrate to Canada temporarily. And guess what we have here? H1B visa holders. And here's another reason why I believe it's a first in, first out. July 16th, processing times 0 to 2 months. Well, they're projecting to pump these through in this simplified process. You remember we talked about that. And that the work permit processing should only take 2 months. And why do they say 0 to 2 months? Because just like the temporary to permanent pass, TR to PR program that I worked with back in 2021, some of those people who were the first to file, they land right on an officer's desk to process. And if they land right on an officer's desk to process, then they're going to be in a pretty phenomenal position to have no delays and maybe get their work permit approved in a week. That is what I believe is going to happen. And, there's a lot of other intel. I've been heavily involved with many of the government's programs, the Canada-Ukraine Emergency Authorization for Travel. Well, guys, that one is coming to an end. The Kuwait visa for Ukrainians is coming to an end. And what's been happening? Many officers have been aligned and assigned to process those work permits and the visitor visas that come with them. Or I should say the visitor visas and the work permits that come with them. Many officers have been assigned to do that. Well, what's going to happen when it comes to an end here in July? A whole bunch of officers are going to have capacity to slide over and process these. And this is a one-time, they received I think it must be almost 1 million applications through that Canada-Ukraine Emergency Authorization for Travel. But in this, we have 10,000. So I fully believe that they are going to be able to pump these out. So people that apply on July 16th could very well see at a max, maybe September, right? You could have your work permit approved. So you can see the program will give, once again, and their families a pathway, H1B specialty occupation visas, and their families a pathway to work for 3 years. You don't need a job offer in Canada to apply. You don't need one. And choose if this program, if your United States work visa is expiring soon. Okay. So it says this, but this is just an example. It doesn't mean, I don't believe, that your US work visa must be expiring soon. It just says choose this program if. So take a look at it if you're in this situation. Or if you've been laid off, hey, pay attention. This is another option for you. I don't believe that it means your work visa has to be expiring. Maybe they could, it's possible, but I don't think they're going to be restrictive. And you want to advance your career in North America. Great. And you can see here, follow to be notified when the program goes live. So you can go to the main government sites and basically watch, follow social media. So there you go. So there is a very kind of high level of kind of where we're at with the details and information that has been shared. So now I want to open this up wide for you guys to start asking your questions. And I promise I will share every single thing that I know about this program, about how Canada processes work permits, both as a former immigration officer, as an immigration lawyer, and someone who's been involved for over 20 years within the Canadian immigration system. So hopefully I know a few things, you guys, right? Okay, let's see. We'll start from the beginning. We'll work our way through here. Let's see what is next. Okay, Sarav says, I have a valid H1B still till September 2024 and staying in the US. I'm 45 years old. Kindly let me know whether I'm eligible to apply. You may very well, Sarav, be eligible. Right now, if you're an H1B holder and you're in the US, that's essentially what they've limited it to. Okay, and then we've talked about that son process. It says 0 to 2 months, so I have to believe that. Okay, what time will this go live? That's a great question. So speaking from past experience, when they did this the last time, they're not really in the business of making people get up at, 12:01 a.m. in the morning to submit the application. The last time they did something similar to this, they opened it up at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. And so that's 10 a.m. Mountain Time, 9 Pacific. And yeah, you can do the math. 1 p.m. Atlantic Time. So that's what I think. Will this require color copy of the documents? What to do if the system goes down? Oh my goodness, Dan. If the system goes down with the TR to PR pathway, here's the interesting part. Those who are subscribing to my course on this, and the link is below, or our clients who hire our firm, and remember, we're pretty much capped out at that. If you get your application in first, you're going to be in a far greater position to have this work out for you without glitches than people who are piling in later and or not able to get their application filed. So back in the days of the TR to PR pathway, the payment portal crashed. So they'd beefed up the system to handle a large intake of people when they were filing their applications, but they hadn't accounted for the payment process. So within the payment process, as people started to pile in, most of the clients in my course were already done and submitted and, high-fiving each other online. But when it came to others that were filing later, there was this big bottleneck of people and it crashed the payment portal. So then people had to keep waiting and hoping that the payment would come through and reopen and refreshing, and it was ugly. So that's entirely possible. But what I do, Dan, what I teach people in my DIY course and the master classes that I have is that you need to be educated. You need to be knowledgeable about every aspect of this process. You need to be flexible. The more knowledge you have, the more you're going to be able to adapt no matter what you experience. And we're going to talk about all the pitfalls of the previous ones that I've experienced as an immigration lawyer. I'm going to share all of that insight. So essentially everything that's in here is going to be shared with you. And then added on top of that knowledge and experience, you are super highly motivated, and you guys are all smart, intelligent, and you're going to be just in a great position because you're competing against people that don't have that. All right. And you look right now, we've got, it fluctuates from like 70 to 50 people watching this live. So I'll be honest, 10,000 spots. If the other people are relying on other people to do it, maybe it might work out. That's great. But those who are watching this are going to get a leg up. All right. Let's see what else we have going on here. Let's see. Okay, Marielle, I'll just touch on your question really briefly. I don't see a TR to PR pathway, a new TR to PR coming. So, yeah, I feel for you guys who are kind of stuck in limbo. We're waiting for this, this individual right here to come up with a plan for all of you international graduates. I don't know. I don't know what his plan is. I'll be honest. I thought he actually would create something specifically for international students in Canada, but I just don't know, Marielle. Okay. Ram Kumar says, how much is the cost for applying a work permit for primary and spouse and study permits for kids? Okay. So that's something we can look at because they're not going to charge more for this process. So if we look at, and let me just share the screen and you guys can pull it up too. Canada doesn't really distinguish, when it comes to the processing of applications, the fee list. They don't have different fees traditionally for different kinds of work permits. A work permit has a certain fee, a study permit has a certain fee, and a visitor visa has a certain fee. So you can see here, if you go through the work permit process, you can see for the work permit, it's $155. And then because this is an open work permit, there will be another $100 for that. So if you as a principal applicant are submitting, it's $255 for your work permit and $255 for your spouse if they're an open work permit holder. If your children are coming and they're of school age, then the fee per person is $150. Okay, that's the fee. Now, with that being said, there are other factors and other costs that come up within the process. And if we scroll down here, you'll see at the bottom, Canada also requires individuals and families to do biometrics. And there's an extra fee associated with that. That's usually $85. Or if you have a family of more than 2 people, which is like if you have a child and you and your spouse have a child, then it's going to cap out at 150. Okay. Or sorry, 170. I can read. So that's essentially the cost. And like I said, for a study permit, $150. And basically it's 155 plus 100 or 255 for the work permit and the open work permit holder fee, which is kind of like an add-on, right? And we can expect that that's what the costs are going to be. All right. And those of you who are yeah, well, we'll just leave it at that. Okay. Let's keep zipping through here. Okay. Rats says, hi, Mark, I'm working in the US on an H1B since 7 years. However, I also have a postgrad work permit, which is eligible for 18-month renewal. Will H1B pathway will have any conflict? The existing work permit still working in US. That's crazy. How are you working in the US for 7 years, but yet your postgrad is still valid? Did you do your studies online? Well, regardless, no, it won't be a conflict. It's not going to prevent you from submitting your application. It's not. You can submit a new one. That's really an interesting situation. Yes, Sun says, if a Canadian visitor visa process is already ongoing, can we still apply through this program? Yes, you can. There's no restrictions on that. Okay, so Aditya says, so can you give me a possible list of documents that should be prepared? And also, can you tell something about the pages where we apply on July 16th? Okay, so like I said, as far as the pages go, they have not yet released it. As I've searched through everything that they've shared, this one here is a place where they have other, and I'm going to shrink this down just so that it's easier for you guys to see what I'm looking at here. So this is the government site here where it's talking about top talent from around the world, choose Canada. Here on this page, they have express entry, they have startup visas, and they have get started. And then they also have I want to, and you can see that it says it goes live July 16th. So it's possible that on this page here, like you can click on here and it'll take you right to the process for applying for express entry, how it works, everything like that. This also will be a jump start that should take you right to the place where they go live, but we'll see what happens. You can see digital nomads and global skills strategy also have get started buttons. So I'm going on a limb and I'm saying that, you know, this one right here should have a get started button right here too, but we shall see. And this is the fun part of the masterclass and the private group that we're setting up for all of you who are looking to participate in the masterclass and my DIY course. Everybody just crowdsources. We get together, we share information with the other attendees in the group. Whenever the government posts some new advisory, I don't always catch it. I'm not always the first. I sure try to be. But sometimes you guys who are watching this like hawks, I'll be in basically 11 consultations during the day and I won't catch something as fast as you guys do. But then we share it in the community group. We share the links. We share it freely with one another. And everybody learns and benefits together. And the fun part is that someone might find some interesting little thing that someone has said applies to the program, and I'll have an opportunity to look at it and say, yeah, no, they're out to lunch, or, hey, that's really neat. That's a good idea. Or that could very well be another piece of intel that we can share. So it's really a community kind of minded process within this course. And with the TR to PR pathway that I did, that process, I'm actually going to show you guys here what it looked like. So, because this is another indication of what I thought this program may look like too. So temporary public policy, it'll be very similar to this, except it will probably say, you know, this is the Canada H1B Visa Holder work permit. Maybe it will be a separate page like this. But when you scroll down, you can see here, this one obviously came to an end November 5th. Similar, right? There will be an end date. And then as you scroll down streams and application limits, you can see that there were caps. And this recent international grad from a Canadian institution, 40,000 applicants. My goodness, this sucker filled up in like, what was it? Like in 3 hours, literally. Then this one took a little bit longer. I can't remember if it was a couple weeks or a month to fill up. And then the healthcare never did fill up just because there weren't enough people that were eligible that qualified. In fact, the applications submitted were 7,155. And then these other ones that also didn't have caps, it showed the number of applications that were submitted under these programs, which wasn't a substantial number. But this one was a freaking crazy frenzy. 40,000 international students, highly motivated, looking to get PR as quickly as possible. And in fact, you guys, there were so many people that submitted so fast that many people submitted on the very same second when they clicked submit. And the tracker, the counter couldn't catch it. And so there are almost 8,000, more than 8,000 additional spots that slipped in, 48,000 just because of how fast people were submitting their applications. So this is what I want you to prepare for. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm trying to help and teach. And there's only so much that I can do in a live Q&A like this, right? And that's why I created the course. You guys don't have to pay the same fee that you would to hire me personally. And the reality is I already have someone lined up that I'm going to work with that came from my consults today. And 4 other people also came through. And so, but what I do is I share everything that I know, I teach you. And in the course, I'll be creating actual on-demand lessons as soon as I see and as soon as the government releases what's going on. And those will be available for you to follow if indeed they open it up enough for us to see how to prepare before they actually open everything on the 16th. So the moment I hear, I'll quickly turn around a lesson. That's a lesson that you guys can actually watch. And the reality is, if we're really cutting things tight, then I'll just do it live. I'll walk through exactly what I see, teaching you, training you, and all of the lessons are all available as a resource that you can go back and watch. Now, July 16th, it's July the 3rd. That's why I'm starting this, to prepare people, help them, teach, educate. And as the masterclass starts, we're going to do it not every day next week, but if there's any announcement, any change in what we're talking about, then I will immediately go live. Sometimes during the day to the YouTube here, and then the more specific stuff that we're able to dive deeper in will be in the member only section, the course. And yes, this is my livelihood. You know, I love helping people and sharing and educating, but at the same time, I have 4 children. My youngest just graduated, and they're all going to be in university. You know, it's not cheap. And I'm an immigration lawyer, not a tax lawyer. So I can tell you, I'm not rolling in the dough like the tax lawyers are. But anyways, I didn't get into this for the money. I got into it to help people. And I genuinely want you guys to succeed. I don't want you to get stuck using a representative that doesn't know what they're doing, or these representatives that truly don't care about you and just hire all these people and paid them $15 an hour Canadian minimum wage to file your application, and you don't even know who's filing it. I want you to use experienced people. If you've got an immigration lawyer or an immigration consultant that says, I work directly with you, there's no one ahead of you in the line, and you trust them, then go for it, because they'll have the knowledge and experience. But if not, and they're not answering your questions satisfactorily, and their agreements suggest that maybe someone who doesn't have experience, or you're going to be 2nd, 3rd, 4th in the queue, do not hire them. You're better off doing it on your own. Okay, let's see what else we have here. We'll go through a few more. We're not going to spend a long time tonight, but I definitely want to get everybody's questions answered. Okay, this is an interesting question, Andy. Do I know how many H1B permit holders are experiencing problems in the US and will be interested in this option in Canada? Okay, this is something that I learned so much from my consults as well, and the ones that I had even today. You know, I don't know what the ratio is, but you know, someone was saying up to 70% of all H1B visa holders are Indian nationals. And yes, there are abilities to extend H1Bs in some circumstances. What is there? About 60,000 new H1Bs that are issued every year, and then another, 15 or 20,000 that are more for special kind of categories. But I can tell you, you know, there's 400,000 maybe H1B visa holders in the US right now. These are numbers that I don't have accurate information. I tried to find it, but I couldn't. So around those numbers. And Andy, how many are experiencing problems? Well, I talked to one person who's actually submitted his permanent resident application in the US. His wife has an open work permit to work based on that submission, but he's looking at 20 more years, and it's already been in the queue for 4 years. These people genuinely are going to be dead before their permanent resident applications or even the green card is even considered. Now, there may be other mechanisms for people to transition, but the vast majority of individuals do not see a meaningful pathway to permanent residence. They're stuck in limbo for decades, waiting for their permanent residence application to be approved. And obviously it depends on the country in which you come from to some extent as well. But this is a reality, Andy, and this is why I'm creating it. And one consult, like I said, he'd just been laid off. And others were very concerned because it was looking like there were going to be additional layoffs. So those people, hands down, I wish those in particular would have the opportunity to get through. So I hope that people, can benefit from what we're sharing and what we're talking about here and prepare themselves. Okay. So you can see Hardy, we talked about that. They said 0 to 2 months for processing. Sudakar says, is there any age limit for this program? No, I don't think so. I don't see anything in here that would restrict age. Canada wants the experienced talent. It doesn't say in these fancy little announcements that we just want the young graduates, right? What it says is they want to offer international tech talent the opportunity to stay and work in North America, which presupposes that these individuals in these specialty occupations right here are that way for a reason, because they're special, that they have expertise, that they have education. And Canada says, hey, if the US doesn't want you, we want you. All right. And so I haven't seen anything with respect to age. Okay. Naritha says, what documents are needed to get ready? And this is a good question. So if you go to our YouTube channel, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time diving deep, you will see here that Alicia and I, on this day, we created an episode right here. There's about 4,000 views. There should be like 10,000 views. But this video here, we go through in depth our top essential things you must do now to prepare for the July 16th, basically launch of the program. And there's a bunch of things that we talk about. And, if I could jump in and maybe just, pull some off the top of, my head, the first thing always, Haritha, is to make sure that obviously your passport is valid. If you don't have a valid passport, which I have to assume most of you will have one, it's July 16th. Some of you, if your passport is under 3 years and you can go through and do a rush request, and they will genuinely return it in only a few days. And that's the case. If you have a passport that's expiring in something less than 3 years, you may want to extend it if there is some urgent rush that you can to extend it. Because if your passport's only valid for 1 year, with the QET visa, which was also this massive program, they don't have an opportunity for people to extend it once they get their new passport. And I suspect that's probably going to be the case with this too. It's a one-time shot. And so if that's the case, you may want to consider extending it if there's time to do it in the next 13 days. Okay. You need to start figuring out if you haven't, and updating your travel history. Now, the benefit you guys have is that with the H1B visas, you did a lot of the heavy lifting to get the H1B in the first place. But some of you have been in the US for a long time, and you may not remember all the places you've lived or moved to or wherever in the US or before you came. So 10 years of personal history, you need to start accumulating that and leave no gaps. Go day by day by day. That includes your address, your travel history, and then your work study history, things like that back 10 years. In some cases, they could go back to when you're 18, but generally Canada focuses on the last 10 years. And so start collecting those now. Now there's forms, there's additional forms that you will fill out. They're probably going to be online forms where you enter the information in. But you want to have it ready. So all you have to do is transcribe it over. Another thing, family information. People don't think about that. Sometimes Canada wants to know about your parents, your spouses, your dependent children, and your siblings. And so you need to get that up-to-date information, including step siblings. So where do they live? What is their email address? Things like that. Be prepared, birth dates and things like that, addresses, to collect that for your immediate family, because that's a part of the application forms. All right. Documents. And this is really what Haritha is asked here. Like I said, a valid passport, have copies of your data page and all the stamp pages, not only just to have a complete copy of the passport, but also confirm your H1B status and your entry date and those essential documents that show you have valid ongoing work authorization in the US. Of course, Canada requires photos of you. So get your digital photos done. That's one thing that I would encourage people to include. And they're just kind of like a passport photo. They look the same, but they're, digitally, you can scan them in and have them available. Further details will be available as they're released on what those should look like. But generally, if you go to any of the the passport photo places, they're going to give you a photo that's going to be pretty close. Proof of current H1B status in the US, which we have. Copies of your bachelor's, master's degrees. So specialty occupations, right, require usually a bachelor's degree in many instances. And so Canada is going to likely want to see that as well. So make sure you have your transcripts and those degrees available. Your CV or your resume. That's another thing that I expect that they're going to be wanting to see. And then here's another thing for you that are kind enough to show up and be here with me. A little tip as well. It wouldn't hurt for you to get an updated FBI police clearance. Why? Well, if IRCC asks for it, which they very well could, it will delay the processing of your application. If you have it already in advance, then just get it. And while you're at it, if you can request one for India or another country that you may have lived in, the key is to get it for any country you lived in for 6 months in a row within the past 10 years. So if you've lived somewhere else outside of the US and you were at least 18 years old, but you lived in that country for 6 months or more after turning 18, then get a police clearance from there or start the process. It just will not hurt. And really, make sure that you've got all of the additional family information for your family, your accompanying dependents. Marriage certificates, birth certificates, those kinds of things, and make sure everybody's passport is up to date and valid. Sometimes kids, we forget to extend them. And maybe there isn't going to be time to extend it, but if you have an expired passport, it's not going to work. All right. So that's right now, Haritha, that's kind of a little bit of a high level tip. And once again, you guys are getting access to it. And I love the fact that people who make the sacrifice to come, they get the full benefit. And, guys, you've got friends that are probably looking at going through the same process. Don't hesitate to share this with them and to come and subscribe to the YouTube channel, because as I go live, you'll then be able to get notifications. YouTube will actually give it to you. Otherwise, sometimes it's hard to get noticed in this noisy world, right? I can do an awesome video, and if you don't know what's happening, you'll miss out. And you'll probably be able to see here on the YouTube channel. And yes, this is broadcast to Facebook and LinkedIn and the other locations, even Twitter. But this is an easy place to find documents. And you'll see here that I have a separate playlist right at the beginning of my channel called the Canada H1B Visa Holder Work Permit. And this is where all of these videos are going to be housed. So you'll be able to find them really easy. And yeah, it's all designed to give you the tools and resources to basically get your application approved the first time. Okay, let's keep zipping. Let's see what else we have here. Lots of questions. What time zone does the office doing this program work in? It's interesting because, like I said, noon Eastern Standard Time is when they released it, but the government of Canada uses UTC time, Universal Time, and that can often really be kind of a weird time. So we'll just have to see how it plays out, Dan. And yes, Andy, it's possible it could be more focused, but we'll just have to see. And then we've got Andy Chan. Hey, good to see you. Hi, Mark. Even though I'm an RCIC, I've signed up for the masterclass. I'm looking forward to it. I need someone like you to get me to think faster to help my clients. Andy, I am delighted to help you. And I love you guys that actually care. Yeah. Guys, you have no idea what I see every day. Man, I look at the Andys here, Andy Rodriguez and Andy Chan and you guys out there who are just trying to do things right. Man, I didn't think I was going to get emotional about this. This is my problem as a people pleaser. I see so much crap out there from immigration consultants that just totally, all they care about is money and they don't care about people. And then I see people like you, Andy, and out there that are genuinely trying to do things right, educate yourselves, learn, just practice at a super high level. And it just breaks my heart because it's really hard for people to tell the difference. And fancy website, right? A fee that looks really cheap. And next thing you know, people's opportunities, their one opportunity to come to Canada is gone. And this, I've never seen them ever do this in the past. This is crazy that they're even contemplating this. And people that get in, they're going to benefit from it. And people that hire good representatives that care enough to learn, I keep popping you up, Andy, you're here, my friend. And, and I'm so grateful for the good consultants out there. But my goodness, there are so many out there that just do not care, do not know what they're doing, and should never have been granted authorization to represent people. They do nothing to educate themselves, and their sole purpose is to hire as many people underneath them to do the applications when these people really have no experience themselves, let alone the principal. So I'll leave that the way it is, but I have so many consults with people and I can't help them. I just can't, because the damage is done. And there are immigration lawyers out there as well, who I've seen them, who use, assistants and paralegals who don't know anything. They say, okay, go figure it out. It's just a bunch of forms. It is not just a bunch of forms. And the slightest mistake, can result in a refusal. So I'll leave it at that. You guys, I don't mean to get emotional, but man, this stuff is so, so painful. Okay, let's keep zipping. And Andy, you're right. If you're working in STEM categories, tech, healthcare, you might have a good chance of this work permit. That is true. Yeah. And then let's see what else Andy's got here. I might think, as far as the occupation is a NOC tier 0, 1, 2, or 3, the spouse or partner might also be eligible to apply for open work permit. Yeah. And I think we see, Andy, that, this is an open work permit. So I don't think it matters. I really don't. As far as occupations, I think it's going to be like really streamlined and open. Have already been screened. You're right. So Andy says it should be streamlined since these workers have already been screened by the U.S. immigration system. Yeah. And I think as far as their qualifications, I think it's going to be pretty darn open. So, all right, let's see here. We do have a super chat I didn't see. So this super chat was from XYZ. XYZ says, is it necessary to include our children's passport in the work permit application if their U.S. passport is being renewed, while my spouse and I have valid passports and our children are U.S. citizens? Oh, XYZ, you are totally caught in this situation, aren't you? The reality is, you're going to proceed forward as best you can with the world you're dealing with. If your children do not yet have their passports, we always want to include them. And there is absolutely a danger that if they don't have the passport, IRCC could refuse the application. But if you're in a situation where you have nothing to lose, then in that case, you're gonna take a chance, and it may very well work. You submit the application with you and your spouse's passport, and then you provide a letter of explanation with proof that you've submitted the passport request for your children. And then that's what you do. That's the best that you do in the circumstances. And then you keep your fingers crossed that you're not going to run into an officer that is a jerk. Okay. Okay. Everina says, I just had an approved ICT and my H1B will be expired next month. Can I apply this open work permit for H1B? Will it affect my ICT? I'm assuming an L visa in the US is what you're talking about, Everina, and not, an ICT to Canada, because we have reciprocal kind of similar work permits. Ultimately, will it affect your ICT? This is something I can't answer. I really can't. Yeah, I know that Canada and the US have full information sharing. So if you start applying for open work permits in Canada, the US authorities can figure it out if they want to. But just because you have an open work permit to Canada doesn't mean that, that you can't continue to work in the US from a Canadian perspective. If you get the open work permit and then things start to pick up speed in the US and you say, you know what, actually the opportunities are better in the US for me right now. Well, you can absolutely, proceed forward with that. You can. All right, let's see what else we have here. Okay, and remember, if I skip past your question, we're all focused today. For those of you who are just sorting this out, we are entirely focused today on the H1B visa holder work permit. So if you ask questions about other things related to immigration, come join me on Wednesday, just in 2 days at 10 a.m. and we can answer those questions. All right, zipping through here. Well, okay, Ayush says, can you also be self-employed on an open work permit? That's actually a really good question, Ayush. And yes, you can. But here's the thing. If you're self-employed working in Canada, you have very few pathways, legitimate pathways to permanent residence. There are startup visas and things like that. But ultimately, when you are working and you're self-employed in Canada, many of the programs that would be open to someone who was working for a Canadian employer are closed to you. So you can always, and remember guys, if you have specific issues, you can always book a consult with our law firm. And I'll just show you. All you have to do is slide over and there's a link in the description below. click on speak to a lawyer at the top here, and then just slide right in and book a consult. And someone was, talking about, I keep getting to these comments. Oh, you are so expensive. Mark charges so much money. Don't use, I think they called me a joker, maybe. I don't know. But the reality is, in this 25 minutes, we don't just sit there taking your information, but we provide very sound, practical advice that can get you to where you want to go. Let's get back to the right screen here. Now I'm flustered. It's been an unbelievably long day for me, you guys. Okay, let's see if we can get to a few more questions here. Okay, so I think I answered this one, Hardy, as far as documents. Okay, Leon says, is STEM same as high tech? I'm a mechanical engineer. Am I qualified to apply? Thanks. So STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math, right? So STEM is more broad than just high tech. And so personally, I think it's not going to be limited to just high tech. I think there's going to be, it says specifically that, when people are coming through, they isolate them and describe them as specialty occupations. So yes, it was a part of the announcement, was part of the, the tech kind of, the tech conference, the collision conference, but still, I think there's going to be an opportunity. We'll see, Young, we'll see. Okay. And we've got that, Haritha. I think we've answered that one. This is a good question. Aditya says, do singles have more of a chance than married for the same? It's all a matter of how fast you get the application submitted, right? And, I think generally speaking, a lot of people who are on H1B in the US are more experienced. They've gone through a whole master's program. They've been working in specialized occupations. And so I think the majority of the people, I think, are going to be married or have other dependents, but we'll just have to see. Okay. Okay. Rats confirmed, studied online. And thank you so much for responding to our queries. Always truly appreciate your time. I'm happy to do this, you guys. And no, it's not just, you guys can choose if you want to join me in the actual DIY course. Like I know what it can do for people. Like I said, I finished workshopping over 500 people through the process when the TR to PR pathway program came through. And, this Canada H1B work permit, you can just click on the links below and it will take you here. And the first masterclass session starts on July the 4th. So when you click on here and you enroll, you can see there's more background information on how it will play out and all of the, all of the aspects of it. And the course itself is well, it depends on where you're at, $347 US. That's what it is to be involved. And it all starts tomorrow. And do I have every type of, form and everything ready to go? No, because they have not yet released it. But I will continue to update you guys, and we will jump on live just like this. And the first one starts tomorrow, where we dive in deep, where we'll dive right into the actual processes that the government is currently using for other applications. And we'll see what we can learn from them. And the moment we learn exactly what direction they're going to go, that's when we're going to be sharing really specific, detailed information to get you guys prepared. Okay. Ravi says, this is a good question. Will past visitor visa rejections have any effect? Yes, they can. Ultimately, when they say expedite, if you've got an H1B visa and you're working in the US right now, usually those past visitor visa refusals are not going to be as big of an issue. They're not. And so I think one of the things that the government also announced recently was this mechanism to fast track other work permit applications that were already in the queue to Canada, that were quite old, waiting to be processed. When you apply to the US or Canada or some of the other countries, they look at your temporary intent. Will you return back home if I grant you this temporary visa to our country? Well, Canada is experimenting right now with fast tracking applications and not going through that assessment process. Even for some financial aspects of applications, they've decided that they're going to try to get back and clear out this backlog by just mass approving large numbers of these people with visitor visas that have been backlogged. So I think they're probably going to institute some of this stuff. There's probably some AI involved with this, but at the end of the day, it could potentially affect, but it's not going to stop you from applying, Ravi. Okay, Haritha, we got that one as far as documents. We've covered that. Okay, Rena says any additional fees to submit the application for Canada H1B work visa apart from masterclass and visa fees. Well, the reality is I've told you the visa fees, and that's usually what's going to be charged. The masterclass is there. If you subscribe, you'll get all the information and knowledge, and I'll share everything I know. Any other fees, well, if you choose to hire a representative to assist you, then they're going to have fees associated with it. So if people want to book an immigration consultation with me and talk about specific aspects, we have opened up our consults for that purpose to help people and answer questions, as things start to progress forward, and even to assess, people to give them more details on what the world will look like once you get your work permit, as far as permanent resident options that might exist in Canada. I may very well do another video on that specific topic, so stay tuned. Okay. All right. I love that handle, successful failure. Can I apply for spouse and our newborn sponsor if I'm working self-employed UberX without any income or job letters? Okay, you need to be on an H1B, my friend. Okay, Hardy says, with that open work permit visa, will we get a visa stamp on the passport, an ID card like a PR-ish, or both? What you get is an approval letter originally from IRCC. That letter you take with you when you go to the port of entry, whether it's the land crossing or you're flying into Canada, and then that officer will issue you an actual work permit. And in the course, I'll have a sample of what that looks like. But it's a work permit document that's stapled or included right in your passport when you come. So that's what you use. Okay. Thanking you for updates. Good to see you. You're very welcome, Davina. Okay, let's see here. Okay, yeah. So in RATS, studied online, postgrad started late 2022. Visited Canada last year. I didn't get the kind of job I want in Canada, so still in US, 40 plus years old. Yeah. So understand that if you want to come to Canada, you're going to need to bite the bullet and just come, my friend. You're going to need to do that. And your postgrad in the meantime is getting burned up. So maybe this will give you a little bit more time. Okay. And I think we talked about this already, son, documents for kids and spouse. You look really good with the beard. Thank you for all the helpful information. I'm so glad I'm subscribed. I'm so excited to have you, and we'll see you tomorrow. Okay. And I can't wait to see what people's real names are too. I usually ask you guys in the group because sometimes the handles that you have, Dianine 3D, maybe that's your name. But I love clarifying that. Okay. Okay. Successful failure. If take your spousal sponsorship course, how to contact if I have any doubts while filling up the application. With the spousal, we don't have a masterclass associated with it. So it's a standalone course. And then after that, if you do have questions, then you need to actually book a consult. If I had more people that were purchasing the spousal, then I would consider doing accompanying master classes, but at this stage we don't. Okay, who specifically is considered as H1B families? It's accompanying dependents, spouse, dependent children, and Canada treats children as being dependent all the way up to the age of 22. Once they turn 22, they're no longer considered to be a dependent. And Canada has open work permit possibilities for spouses, and we're waiting for them to roll out all of the instructions for dependents as well. But they can come and they can get study permits and visitor records depending upon the stage they're at. Yes. Okay. Let's see here. Eric says, I should have hired you, Mark. I'm a bit worried about the lawyer I hired. I don't think I can withdraw. I don't understand why you wouldn't be able to withdraw, Eric. If it was an actual lawyer, well, I would hope that they're pretty competent. Yeah, like there should be no reason why you can't pull out if you cancel it. If it's a lawyer, you can cancel and get your money back. No lawyer can take your money without performing some service for you. And if you have any issues, you can reach out to me directly, Eric. But sometimes consultants will say that they're a lawyer, right? And I think our Andys can confirm that. And, but yeah, you just have to be proactive and don't be afraid. This is your future and you should be able to pull out if they retained you specifically for that. Sudakar, thanks for the thumbs up. Alumala says, if the partner doesn't have an H1B visa, what is the process for her? She will get work permit too. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's what it says. Okay. Andy says a detailed analysis of current data has concluded that as of the above date, the H1B authorized to work population is approximately, yes, I saw that, Andy, the 583,420. My question was how many are actually working? And so that's kind of like approvals, right? And I guess that's what you go by, right? So Excellent recommendations, Mark. You're very welcome, Andy. Okay. Ravi says, my wife has applied for my open work permit from Canada on the 4th of May. Can anyone tell me how long it will take? Okay, well, go to the IRCC and look at the work permits, and just you go to the IRCC processing times and check it out. Oh, Andy, great. You're joining on the course too. Great to have you. I love it when immigration consultants come and take the courses. Ultimately we're sharing everything, and I love having you there too, Andy, both of you guys, because you'll have insight in areas that maybe I don't. And then we can all just collectively learn together. So fantastic. Okay. Leon says, hey, Mark, is STEM the same? Okay. I covered that one. Okay. Rizwan says the H1B is expired, living in India, did not enter US, and all 6 years left working at US. Am I eligible? I personally think you need to be in Canada with a valid H1B visa. That's what I think. Leon, you're very welcome. We're zipping through, trying to get to the end. Let's see. Let's see here. And all I can say here, Monsoon says, hey, Mark, please, man, bigger help. I'm in Canada PR. My sister's in India, but is deaf. What avenues she can use to come to Canada? There's a reason you've paid a lot of money. Sometimes there just isn't, realistically, there just isn't an option. And there's no humanitarian and compassionate application from outside of Canada. So Monsoon, I wouldn't be able to help you. And I heard breaks that you paid thousands of dollars. With me, when I have a client and I can't help them, I tell them. I don't like take their money and then say, oh, let's try this. And then it doesn't work out. Oh, shucks, too bad, right? Okay. Okay. Sashin says, once we get the open work permit, can we still keep living in the US? Second question, can we apply for Canadian PR after getting the open work permit? If yes, what are the conditions? Thanks. Okay. So Sashin, this is something I definitely will do another video for, but the reality is technically, yes, you could get the open work permit in Canada, and then, come back to the US and not use it. That's possible. Now it kind of breaks my heart knowing there's so many people out there that are really desperate, that have been laid off from their work, that have 60 days to fix their situation. And this is maybe a lifeline for them. And if but it's probably a race to file. And the reality is, Sashin, that you can do that. And then as far as Canadian PR is dominated by individuals that have high human capital. So that's one thing. And that can be accumulated, obviously through your language, your education, your work history. But there's also added points for working in Canada and having Canadian work experience. And that's where the open work permit really comes in. And it can be huge boost to pathways to PR, not just Canada's express entry system, which right now for people who have Canadian work experience, they're going through, and almost 4 months is what it takes to get permanent resident status when you're in Canada and you qualify through the Canadian experience class. Can you compare to that, Sashin, to what some of my clients today have told me, 25 years or more? Is it 30 years? I don't know. What is it if you're an Indian national looking to get green card status on an H1B? So conditions, it all varies. And if you really want to know kind of how it applies to you, Sashin, and the options, then I encourage you to slide over to our firm website, like I've showed you before. And there's a link in the description that says book a consult. At least I think there is. This is all a blur, and you can just book a consult. And if you want to know what the experience is like, and yes, we recognize our fees are higher, but man, in that 25 minutes, we can cover more ground than most people in a full hour. And Alicia's been practicing for 2 years longer than me. So we're both in the 20-year range of practice. But just check out the reviews and see what people are saying. It's 4.9 for a reason. And ironically, we just started this about maybe a year and a half ago. I think we started doing these, maybe it's 2 years now. And so, yeah, we take this with tremendous pride, and we work really hard to keep those ratings up there. But anyways, this isn't about hiring Mark. This is about helping you guys. So let's see what else we have here. Okay. Rolling turd. That's so funny. That is so awesome. I'm on an H1B as a management consultant. Will I be eligible under this category? It's very, very possible. Very possible. Okay. Risman says, left few messages. Can you please consider, I think we've answered those. What's the pathway from the H1B program to PR? We'll do a video on that topic, Haritha. Okay. Eric says, I'll see what I can do about this. I believe they said once I paid them, I can't get my money back. Then that sounds like a consultant. That's something that some of the immigration consultants I see, because when it comes to Canada and when it comes to the law societies, Yeah, no lawyer can get away with just keeping someone's money without doing something. No job was done yet, so yes, they should be able to refund my money back. Well, you check, Eric. If they're an immigration lawyer, then you send an email to info@holthylaw.com, info at holthylaw. That's HOLTHELAW.com. I don't think I have a Holthy Law one I can pull up. I think I cleared them all out. No, I don't. You send an email, and I'm more than happy to talk to you about it. I hate when people do that. You're very, very welcome, Andy. Okay, so Monsoon says she's visiting me now. Then an H&C application is possible, Monsoon. If she's here in Canada, it is possible to file a humanitarian and compassionate application for her. It's not something that I advertise, but it is a reality. And the humanitarian compassionate factors, if there's enough there, it might be possible. We in our firm don't really spend a lot of time with H&C applications. There's other firms out there that are really good at it. And, I wouldn't want to tell you to book a consult with us because there are other people that are better at H&Cs than our firm. And yeah. Okay. Sun says, would getting an open work permit add 50 to 200 points to express entry application? No, it will not. Express entry is driven by employer-specific work permits or closed work permits, or employers that have secured a labor market impact assessment. Open work permits won't give you those extra 50 to 200 points for a job offer. But working in Canada for a year can give you up to 40 extra points as a single, and 35 for yourself if you have a spouse that's accompanying you. Okay, does the open work permit start when I land in Canada, or does it have a fixed start and end date? It starts when you obtain that permit. So the first step will be getting the approval letter from IRCC from the consulate. If you require a visa, they're probably going to require everyone go through the consulate just because of the way they need to track it. But once you get that approval letter, then you'll go to the port of entry to actually get the work permit issued. And Canada, in some cases, will, well, if you're a visa required national, you need a visa, they'll request your passport, put the visa in it, and then that visa will allow you to get on a plane and travel to Canada. Or for some of you that are by land, you just go to the port of entry and then you get your work permit at that stage. That work permit should then be issued for 3 years, and then you can do what you want to do, Ravi. Okay. Leon says, thanks for answering my last question. If I have a Mexico temporary resident visa in my passport, will it affect my application to this work permit? Nope, it won't. Okay. You're welcome, Eric. Monsoon, can I hire you to do that H&C? No, Monsoon, we're not really super good. The difference is we do put our heart and soul into these applications, but my goodness, you've spent thousands of dollars already. And I'd have to decline that, Monsoon. It's not in our wheelhouse. Have I filed H&C applications in the past? Yes, I have, for clients at times. But it's not something that we as a firm really focus on. Okay. Okay. Thank you. This is great. Okay. Andy says, not even consults, Mike. If the representative is regulated, they should refund the money and the retainer should have a clause for refunds. Oh, thank you so much. There's so many scammers out there, Andy. This is, okay. What are we going to give Andy? We're going to give Andy a round of applause. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. Sun says, thanks. Okay. Yes. And you're right. Mexican, Chilean, there's other ones that, maybe even some Brazilians, right? It just depends. And there might be lots of other people from all these other countries as well that are working on H1B status in the US. They could be from Europe. They could be from the US. They could be from Australia. Okay. We're going to wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, just as a little bit of advisory, I'm going to pull this up again and let you know that there is still space for you guys to come in and join us. The cart's now open. All those other people on here that have already subscribed, tomorrow at 7 p.m., same time as we started this. Ironically, I chose July 4th for a reason, the American holiday. If they don't love you guys and they don't want you, we do. And so I strongly encourage you to consider, come join. You can at the very least figure out what it's all about. Ultimately, if you choose not to proceed, that's fine. But we're going to do everything that we can to help and support all of you guys. Okay. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much for connecting in. And we'll go from there. Take care. See you.